Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.
Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. My guest today was a member of not one, but two of the greatest bands to ever emerge from New Orleans, the Meters and the Neville Brothers. Now 75 years old, he is the last of the original four Neville brothers still making music in their hometown. He'll front his own band at the 2024 New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival on Friday, May 3rd. Here to talk about all that and more is the Uptown ruler himself, Cyril Neville. Cyril, welcome to Let's Talk, sir.
Hey, man. Thank you for inviting me, bro.
It's a pleasure, my honor. So, you're the Uptown ruler. You haven't lived uptown in a long time. When you go back to your old neighborhood around Valance Street, do you recognize it at all?
Nope. I recognize half of New Orleans. You know, it's like what, that's par for the course. Not too long ago, I was in New York and went to Harlem. Mm-hmm. Ain't the same. Ain't the same at all. So it's like, just misgentrification and Mr. Gerrymander have been everywhere.
They are a very active couple.
Yes.
A very active couple. You said to me one time the old Wisner Playground, which was in the heart of your old neighborhood there up by Valance Street, you said, now it's a place where soccer moms take their dogs to poop. It's like changed. It's very different.
And that's where we had the Uptown Community Center that Aaron started. Mm-hmm. That is also the park that the first Uptown Super Sunday happened.
Ah, okay, yeah.
And it also was the home of the Uptown Street Festival that happened every year that the Jazz and Heritage Festival kind of helped sponsor and everything, but all of that was from that thing that Aaron did with the community center.
Wow, it all came back to that. Yeah, deep roots. I mean, that band, the Neville Brothers, your family, you had family roots in that neighborhood. The band kind of took shape. That was the vibe, I think, of those streets that really formed the character of that band. The Neville Brothers wouldn't have been the Neville Brothers had they not come up in that, you guys not come up in that neighborhood, probably.
Well, that neighborhood itself, we were one musical family. Mm-hmm. There was the Alcorn family. Different versions of the Alcorn family. Deacon John Moore and his family was up there. Man, it's just like you could, one part of the day, you're listening to rehearsals coming out of our house. Oh. And as soon as that's done, I'm on my way by Warner Williams' house to listen to his band rehearse. And then after that's over, me and Warner going down by Sam Alcorn's house to listen to what was going on there. So it was like, and that is the same thing with every neighborhood during that time in the whole city that, it was like that, all these musical families, like the Andrews family, the Baptiste family, which one?
Which one?
It's like, speaking of the Baptiste family, when you spoke about the bands, I'm one of the only, I think maybe the only one that can say that I was a Neville Brother, a Meter, a Wild Chopper Tulips, a Uptown All-Star, and a Gladiator.
The Gladiator, the early funk band.
The first band I played with outside of my family, when we was Art Neville and the Neville Sounds, which is the same lineup that became the Meters.
That's right.
The four Neville brothers, Zig, George, Leo. So anyway, that whole thing about the music in New Orleans, I used to walk all the way from Uptown to the Ninth Ward just to stand outside of the Lasty family church. Man, the music and the vibrations coming out of there, like forget about it. You know?
Forget about it. Yeah, and you mentioned the Meters, Leo Nocentelli, the guitar player, Art Neville, obviously your brother, the keyboard player, George Porter Jr., the bass player, and Zigaboo Modalist, the drummer. Yes, one of the great bands, obviously, as I said in the intro, of all time. You joined after the Meters had been a band for a number of years.
Well, actually, we all started at the same time. It was Art Neville and the Neville Sounds.
In that incarnation, right?
Art's little house on Chestnut Street, that's where we started rehearsing. And from that, we went to this place called a Nightcap on Louisiana and Carondelet. And was kind of the house band there. And during that time, we played from from Tuesday to Sunday.
Every night.
Yep. And like I said, it started with Art Neville and the Neville Sounds, but even before that, Art and the Hawkettes used to rehearse in our living room.
Hawkettes, of course, you did Mardi Gras Mambo and a bunch of other stuff.
And the cast that was in it was always the cream of the crop of local musicians that was in that band. You know, like when I was a very lucky little kid, man, it was like people, speaking of Kid Jordan was one of the people who I met.
The great sax player.
Yeah, Leo Morris, who became known to the rest of the world as Idris Muhammad.
Great drummer,
You know, you know, just every group of musicians that was part of that band was, like I said, the cream of the crop of New Orleans musicians during that time. Every one of my musical heroes came out of some New Orleans high school music program.
Which shows you the importance
and then
of high
went
school
on
music
to become
programs.
some of the greatest musicians that ever walked the planet, you know. And yeah, like you know, when that left, a lot of everything that was the roux of the gumbo left with it.
Left with it. Back in those days, well, as you talked about, you had Art Neville, Neville Sounds, and then the four guys were the Meters on those early records. Art, Leo, George.
We were playing at the Nightcap. I mean, that place stayed packed every night. But at the same time, them cats, their gig was CC Studios.
Over at Alan Toussaint's studio, being the house band for a bunch of different stuff.
And it was like, that went on from, I mean, everybody who was recording for Alan at that time, that's them cats playing behind them.
Right.
You know, in between those things, they sat there and they came up with these hip little gems that somebody was smart enough to collect and then bring somewhere, you know. Now, like they said, the rest is history, you know.
The rest is history. I mean, some of the greatest funk tunes ever recorded were some of the stuff that they came up with in that studio. You became an official member of the Meters ahead of the tour, the first tour with the Rolling Stones, correct? When you
I had been in the band before then. We had done tours and all of that stuff. But that was when we were on the Chitlin circuit.
Playing the black nightclubs based throughout the South.
The theaters and all of that kind of stuff, yeah. And but you know, they may have some negative connotations to that in some people's mind, but that was all we had at one point.
Right.
If you were in, you know, looked like me and you was a musician, that was the only place you was gonna work.
Right.
You know, but and then the type of people who you got a chance to meet while you were out there, you know, like we played the Regal Theater, the Howard Theater, you know, the Apollo.
In New York, sure, yeah. And
man, it was like not just a dream come true, prayers being answered and all of that, but it was an education.
I'm sure,
you know?
I'm sure. Well, so you guys are used to playing the Chitlin circuit, and then you get an invitation to play stadiums and arenas with the Rolling Stones. Did you find it difficult to make that transition from the small rooms to playing these huge venues with the Stones, or did it seem very natural for you?
No, man, we was who we were.
You were who you were.
And we knew who we were.
Yep.
And obviously the Rolling Stones knew.
They wanted you guys.
You know?
They wanted you guys.
But you know, I was nervous at first because I had heard people like Prince getting booed off the stage opening for them and all of that. So I said, wow, this gonna be a test. You know. But it wasn't. And again, an education.
Absolutely.
because the way they did it, for me, that's, if you're gonna do that, that's the way to do it.
Do it first class, top notch, all the way.
All the way, and give your everything every night.
That's it. That's it. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is Cyril Neville. What sticks out in your mind from those Rolling Stones tours? Because obviously the Stones are coming to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival this year, coming back to town. What do you remember of being on the road with those guys back then?
Man, there's a lot of real gems. One in particular is one night we did get the audience razzing us and all of this kind of stuff. And people always ask me, man, what was that like? And I always said it was like running away with the circus.
Going on tour with the Stones,
Yeah.
It's like running away with the circus, right?
Well, they literally had a circus on stage with us. The tour started off in the States.
Uh-huh.
And on the 4th of July, I can't remember what year it was in some stadium in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 of the Rolling Stones rode out on elephants.
Rode out on elephants.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a rock star move.
Well, all except Charlie Watts.
The drummer.
Charlie Watts stayed impeccably dressed. Man, I'm not getting on that stinky thing,
No elephant for Charlie.
Right. So, I mean, that was one of the things that we had, and they had these little kind of runways.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so, one gig, me and George Porter decided that we were going to go out and we were going to jump from one to the other, crisscross.
Mm.
So we did that one show, and then it said, don't ever do that again. So
That's the Rolling Stones runway. You guys aren't supposed to go on it.
don't
Right?
ever do that again, dude. Yeah, and then another thing that stands out is that night we went, I can't remember exactly, I knew it was somewhere in Germany.
Uh-huh.
And they started throwing ice at first.
Oh gosh.
Then they started throwing cans.
Ooh.
Then they started flattening the cans and frisbeeing them up on stage.
Ow. That could be dangerous.
Oh yeah. So at that point, you hear the crowd just started roaring. I said, oh, they're getting us. No, you turn around and look, and here's Mick coming out on stage.
Mick Jagger.
So Mick got on the mic and said, hey, do y'all want to see the Rolling Stones tonight? Yeah. He said, well, sit down and shut up. These are my friends.
Wow. So he
Some
came
of
out
the greatest musicians on this planet. Shut up.
So he came out into
Yes.
y'all's defense, defended y'all.
He came out and shut that down.
Wow. Good for him. Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him. Good for him. The Meters made some great records. One of my favorites, one of the classics of New Orleans music, Fire on the Bayou. This record right here. You were laughing when you first saw the cover. Why is that?
Man, that picture, that's in a Chapelaya Basin.
The picture on the cover, okay.
Right. We got there in a boat.
Uh-huh.
The 2 or 3 pirogues. One with the camera guys in it. Anyway, when we got out and they were positioning everybody, the reason that you see me standing way back there in the back is because I wasn't coming back in this area right here because we had got chased from up here by a snake. And
gosh.
one of the guys in the boats told us afterwards basically what had happened was we got close to a mother snake's nest and she was protecting her young.
Oh my gosh.
So, it was just funny to see all 5 of those cats trying to climb the same tree.
The Meters trying to all climb the same tree. Yeah, that is quite a visual right there. Oh my gosh. This record has it's got the title track, Fire on the Bayou, Middle of the Road, Running Fast, Mardi Gras Mambo. It's also got They All Asked About You, which my understanding is that was not the original title of that song, that it was there was some other lyric about They All Asked for You.
But there's different ways you could pronounce the ask, leave the K off and it's something else, So yeah, man, that's another interesting story. Me, George, Zig, and one of the his name is anyway, he was one of the Alcorn family, and he played trumpet. Mm-hmm. So we getting ready to go to a gig, and we by Zig's house, and Zig's father was a mason. So he had this party in the yard, and it was a live band. And as we were leaving, they kicked off this song. The next thing, we were on the ground laughing. I had to go home and change clothes. I messed up the stuff I had on. It was so funny. And years later, we realized that that was actually Danny Barker.
Who originated the song that became "They All
That
Ask
was
for You"?
Danny Barker playing that party.
Oh, he's playing that party. Okay.
That was his little ensemble. I think him and Zig's dad at some point were friends.
Okay.
You know, but man, and we just laughed and laughed. So one day we were in the studio, and Alec came out and said, "You know what? We need one more song." And that's why you hear the applause at the end of that song on the record, is because that was the end of the session. We knew it was, you know, a good run, and Zig actually was the one that came up with that idea. Man, why not do that song, you know?
Because y'all needed one more song to fill out the record.
Yeah.
You remember the song y'all heard at the party that Danny, and it was kind of a joke song, I guess, kind of.
And everybody knew about it. And you know, Art knew about it, Leo knew about it. So hey, why not? Let's go for it, you know.
And it became like, I mean, that's probably the song of the Meters that I heard the most growing up here in New Orleans. I heard that all the time.
I play that with my band.
Do you really?
Oh yeah.
They All Ask for You. It's a great song. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is Cyril Neville. After the Meters, you and your brothers formed the band Neville Brothers, did a bunch of great records, you know, Yellow Moon, classic album, but I've heard, I think you've said it and others have said it, that the album that best represents the sound of that band is this live record you guys did, Nevilleization, that was recorded on stage at Tipitina's around, let's see, what, 1980 thereabouts, I think it was recorded, something like that. Earlier, 82, maybe 82. I'm looking at it right here, September 24th, 1982. Do you agree? Do you think this live album is the one that best synthesizes the Neville Brothers sound?
Yeah, and there's another one called Treacherous. There was a double record, and there's stuff on that's the only place you're going to ever find that is on that particular record, you know, and as they used to do back in the day, they have things that some things weren't even finished. There it is.
There it is. Yes,
and,
treacherous, right here. Some things that weren't even finished, you said.
Yeah, and they still put them on the record because it was so funky. You know?
Even unfinished.
Yes.
It was funky and great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. As I said in the intro, you are the last of the brothers still making music. Charles and Art, obviously, are deceased. Aaron has basically retired and lives on a farm in upstate New York. He's a gentleman farmer now, as I like to call him.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, now it's come down to you. You know, you're the caretaker of the legacy. You know, the brothers closed Jazz Fest for many, many years. After Professor Longhair died in 1980, you guys took over that slot as the final act, and you did it all the way through, I want to say 2012, and then it was handed off to Trombone Shorty after that. Looking back at you guys closing Jazz Fest, you know, for me as a fan, and I think for a lot of other fans, that was always an incredibly special moment to see you guys at the end of the festival like that. Did it feel that way to you guys as well? I mean, did it feel like more than just a regular gig? Did it feel like something special that last Sunday?
It was something special. It was every year a family reunion for us because we had family members that came from California, different places like that. That's the only time of the year they came to New Orleans was for that. So it was that. Then the whole family that lived in New Orleans was all together. And then our extended family of, you know, 12 and Shorty and, you know, Buster and different people from the Baptiste family and everything. So that's what it was for us. It was this big family reunion. And then you had the added people like John Goodman and the what we used to call the fifth Neville brother, with his tambourine or his cowbell, Ed Bradley.
Ed Bradley, the newsman from 60 Minutes, right?
Yeah.
That's right. He used to come and hang out with you guys
The
there all the time.
60-minute man.
The 60-minute man. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, and you guys, you always would close. You would do One Love, I think, toward the end of the set usually. And then,
well, it was a medley,
right.
and it was basically 3 or 4 different songs all together, starting with Aaron singing Amazing Grace.
Right.
And then it would go into that. Sometimes it would go into This Little Light of Mine, and, you know, Down by the Riverside or whatever, but it was always that moment when the spiritual, the gospel stuff came out, which is basically the root of a lot of rhythm and blues, you know.
That's right. Yeah.
So it was always a joyful time, you know.
Absolutely, it really was very special, and you know, it's great that you're able to still be a part of it. You're talking about Aaron. He put out a book called "Tell It Like It Is" recently,
and he told it like it was.
I was going to say, he tells all the stories from back in the day. You know, and you guys, yeah, I mean, it was a whole different life back then. Obviously, I mean, you guys, you know, ran with a rough crowd, did some crazy things.
We were a rough crowd.
You were the rough crowd. You were the ones that people were afraid of. Right.
We had a gig in New York. Me and Aaron and Charles, when we was living up, me and Aaron went up there to live with him. But this is the way we were dressing. And then we had the jeans vests, and back in those days they had roach clips that had these big feathers, and we had that stuff all over our jackets, all over our hat. So we went to this place called Catch a Rising Star to, you know, well, basically you had to go in there and show them what you had. Right. And you came that night, and Richard Belzer introduced us.
The comedian, yep.
And he was telling us that the guy who ran the club said when these guys came in, he was wondering, hey man, is this a stick up or what?
He thought y'all were there to rob the place.
So we were dressed and we were looking away and singing nothing like that. We used to actually walk from Charles's house through the Red Hook projects. And we from New Orleans, so we, hey, what's going on? And people looking at us, what's wrong with these fools, you know? And then look how they dressed. So after about 2 or 3 months of that, finally, cats started waving back, you know? And then one day the cat just came and said, man, where y'all from? You know, New York ain't from up here, you know? So we thought, yeah, we from New Orleans, you know? And then so after that, we became friends with people in the projects and everything. And it was just like, then we tell them, see, man, we from the Calliope in New Orleans, so a project is a project, dude. You know, so
you could identify. Everybody could relate. It was cool.
Yeah.
You know, some of these stories. I mean, and we've only got about 5 minutes left here. Some of these stories, yeah. I mean, it's amazing that you survived. The one that sticks out, and we've talked about this before, was the night you guys were doing a gig. I forget the club, and there was an altercation. A man pulled a knife on you
that was the,
and sliced your neck wide open.
It's like I had 132 stitches.
132 stitches.
Yeah.
But the crazy part of that story to me is that you get sliced, 132. You go to the hospital, 132 stitches, and then you went back and finished the gig.
Yeah. Well, actually, when I got to the hospital, I didn't even need that anesthetic or nothing like that. I was already cool. So man, just sew me up and let me go, man. You know.
Meaning you were pretty high on life.
I mean, yes, I was ready.
You were ready.
So like, hey man, just do what you got to do and let me go, you know. And so that's what happened. I sewed up, went back and finished the gig.
I got to say, if I ended up getting 132 stitches one night, that would be the end of my evening. I would not necessarily go back and finish a gig or do anything, quite frankly. That would. But you were determined. You're like, it's a gig. We got to finish the gig.
Yes, that was my life, and that was, and you know, to being on stage with Aaron and in the band that we had, Sam Henry on keyboards, Robert Bonney on drums, Eugene Senegal on guitar, Richard Amos on bass, and everybody sang, with except Sam. You know, but everybody else in the band, so the harmonies and everything was like impeccable. And that little club, man, maybe held about maybe 100, maybe 150 people, but we played there every night except Tuesday. We rehearsed on Tuesday. But every night up there, we was playing there.
So you were like, the music was so good, you were willing to go back and finish that gig.
Oh yeah, not just that, but all our friends and everybody was, you know, what was gonna know, what happened, you know. So when they see me walk back in the door, I was all bandaged up and everything. But you know, that part of the show was, hey man, that was the highlight.
That is the ultimate. The show must go on. I mean,
Yeah.
The show must go on. All right, Cyril, we just got a couple minutes left now, but I mean, as I said in the intro, you're 75 years old now. You're the last man standing. You're representing your generation of Nevilles now. Do you think back at all on your legacy at this point? Are you surprised that you're the guy that's left, that's holding down the fire for everybody else? I mean, what are your thoughts as you reflect a little bit at this point in your life?
Not just me surprised, but I would imagine there's a few other people that are surprised that I'm still here, period. They had 2 NOPD officers basically told me that, how old are you? And I said, 17. He said, you ain't gonna make it to 18. Well, both of them been dead now for a good while, and I'm still here. So God must have decided, well, I ain't ready for him. Let him go. And I said, yeah, I could work. He had work for me to do.
He had work for you to do.
And that book, man, I was there for a lot of stuff in that book, but the way he laid it out, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I was there that night, The one where he was describing the night when there's a song called Brother Jake. That's about a friend of ours. Well, me and Jake had made a pact that we're not getting beat up by the police no more, and we the only ones get beat up. So this particular night, they was wilding out, and we knew their intentions. So once we got in the car, they were still hitting us while they were in the car, but they never hit Aaron.
They never hit Aaron.
They beat me and Jake like we was drums, but they never hit him. So we get to an intersection, and there's a line of a whole bunch of different police cars that with all of the headlights on. So we knew what that was, and if Aaron hadn't been there, I wouldn't be here. He held me and Jake down, and then basically told the cat, said, man, look, don't swing no more, or it's gonna be bad out here. Actually, some of them guys didn't want no part of it in the beginning.
Right.
But that was like one of the highlights when I recognized that in the book that he spoke about that, and our trip to California, meeting Larry Williams.
Crazy.
And he said, we was in the bus. I said, man, how we gonna know when he come? He said, bro, trust me, you gonna know Larry. They had these double doors swinging. The doors bust open and Larry Williams walked out. I said, that must be him. It was Superfly.
It was Superfly.
I mean,
oh my gosh.
It was that the cat in the movie Superfly could have been Larry Williams.
Well, I'm glad Aaron intervened on your behalf. I'm glad he saved you. I'm glad you're still around to make music, and I hope you keep doing it for many, many years. So, Cyril, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, man.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Cyril Neville, thank you again. I'm Keith Spera. We'll see you next time on Let's Talk.
Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.